This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. There is league. Manchester City moved to within 4 points of Arsenal at the top after a brilliant 3-0 win over Liverpool. Jeremy Doku again outstanding. 1,000 games for Pep. We'll do the full countdown. Arsenal concede late at Sunderland. Dan Ballard with an actual Roy of The Rovers performance, a goal, an assist and a stunning block late on. What a noise at the Stadium of Light. Spurs 2, Manchester United 2. An odd game with two odd teams. Personally, I'd have marked Matthias de Ligt in the 96th minute. We'll ask whether Rob Edwards has checked the league table before taking the Wolves job. Celebrate Emi Buendia being back on the pitch and playing well. And ask whether Newcastle fans should worry about their terrible away form. Towards the bottom, there's a big win for Forest, a big win for West Ham, and a big win for Everton. And Palace and Brighton happen. All that, a snowy overhead kick in Canada, and more pathetic begging for you to vote for us in the FSA Awards. All that plus your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, welcome.
Hello, Max.
Hello, Lucy Ward.
Hi, Max.
And welcome, Will Unwin.
Hi, Max.
For the tape, if you knew how long it took us to record just the welcomes, this podcast took like 25 hours to record. But for you, it'll be perfectly edited down because we have an amazing team behind us. Let's begin at the Etihad. Manchester City 3, Liverpool 0. There is a title race. And I feel, Barry, like I only say the word ominous in footballing terms with Manchester City, but they look ominous.
Yeah, you can kind of hear the Jaws cello theme music, can't you? I'm sure Arsenal can, at least. In the build-up to this game, there was a lot of talk about it being Pep's 1,000th game as a coach and with his various different teams. And he said that Liverpool would be the ideal opponents for such an occasion. And now we know why, I guess, because Manchester City swatted them aside with, I would say, a minimum of fuss. Liverpool did not play well. Erling Haaland got his goal. Jeremy Doku was brilliant again, certainly not for the first or second or even third time this season, but I can't think of a better performance he put in his City shirt. Any talk that Liverpool had hit their stride and refound their mojo, I think Arne Slot will have a lot to think about over the international break, which I guess will be dominated by talk of Liverpool being back in crisis because people sort of run out of things to talk about during the international break, particularly when there's not much at stake for England. So it's very difficult to see Liverpool mounting a title challenge from now. They've already, from here, because they've already lost 5 games. Teams that win the title these days tend not to lose more than 5, 6 maximum. So they've lost 5 already out of 11. And Manchester City, yes, they are looking ominous.
Lucy, Doku is extraordinary, isn't he? For someone who, because it must be, this might sound ridiculous, but like he moves his feet like a cartoon, like sort of road runner. And to move your feet that quickly, but to stay in control of the ball is extraordinary.
Yeah, I can remember first seeing him and thinking, wow, I haven't seen somebody dribble like that for a long time. And because he's so strong, it's very difficult to get him off the ball. But now what he's done is his final ball is better because he dribbled. We have a lot of professional footballers over the years who dribble well. And then when they get to the end of it, it's like, what's next? But I think he's improving that. And obviously Pep wouldn't have him playing if he didn't do that. But I just think at the moment he's unplayable. I don't think there's anybody else that dribbles the same as him in world football at the moment, which, I mean, even when he's doubled up on, he just sort of batters them out of the way.
And also like from a standing start, Will, he's sort of like 0 to 100 in about half a second.
Yeah. You ask any footballer what they're afraid of, it's speed. And when you're a fullback, having to go backwards against someone that can, flick of a switch, say, go as quickly as he can, it's incredible. I think you see him from the start. I think, when he came, one of his early games against Bournemouth, he got 4 assists and a goal. And you thought, incredible, this is what he can do, but you're never going to do that consistently. And it's taken him a long time to get up to that level on a regular basis. And I think he's got all these things in the locker, and it's you play more, you know more how to use them and things like that. But also the confidence, when you're fully confident, you know what you're doing next. And I think in previous times, Haaland probably didn't know what was coming afterwards. And I think Doku probably didn't know what was coming afterwards. But now, he's cutting inside, he's winning penalties, scoring goals. Yeah, it's incredible. It's sort of, and I think the exciting player that you want to see, that front, not front three, but the three behind Haaland of Doku, Cherki, and Foden. You're not going to get more excited than that, I think, in the Premier League or world football at the moment, when they're on top of things. And in addition to that, they could all play in any of those roles, and they keep rotating to, confuse defenders even more so. So yeah, it's exciting to see Doku at his very best. And yes, if you think that Conor Bradley did pretty well against Vinicius Junior, he had no chance against Doku.
Yeah, you did think, I've seen him off this week. The rest of my week should be fine. And then you check your diary and it says Jeremy Doku on Sunday.
I think it would be very unfair to lay much, if any, blame on Conor Bradley's door yesterday. I thought he did as well as could be expected, considering the amount of help he did not get he got no help from Mo Salah. I wonder, does Mo Salah, is he told not to help out, or does he just not help out? I don't know. And on the one or two occasions that Ibrahima Konate tried to help him out, he was more of a hindrance than a help, and it led to City's first goal, I think. So I wouldn't be scapegoating Bradley for this one.
And Konate was a bit like one of those guys in Home Alone, just sort of like treading on roller skates and landing on eggs. And actually, Nico O'Reilly, at the same time, Lucy, Nico O'Reilly is really helping Doku and had another really good game.
Yeah, he is, and obviously in the England squad as well. And I think what's interesting is that what Barry said, Salah isn't supposed to come back and help. Who is supposed to help is obviously Szoboszlai and Konate, and Konate had one of his better games. I think he started off quite slowly, and I think as soon as Liverpool fans see Konate starting off slowly, they think, oh no, this is not good. So initially for the penalty, and then for Haaland's goal, the header, he was squared off. So he didn't have any idea really, other than Haaland breathing down his neck, whereabouts he was and what his movement was and his jumping. So yeah, that didn't help. I did think Liverpool were a little bit unlucky about disallowed goal. I think that two big chances that they missed, but they're still below par. What City did is they sat in the middle of the pitch. They didn't go and try and sort of press high, or they didn't. They just and Liverpool, because they've not got the likes of Alexander-Arnold that can sort of ping a pass to negate that in the middle of the pitch, they really struggled to get through. And I think that's going to be a problem for Liverpool, and it has been this season. But obviously then the confidence is lower as well. I think there's lots of stuff going on with Liverpool that sort of works itself out to be having a massive effect, but all little bits.
I mean, Slot after the game, Will, said that even if that goal had been allowed, City would probably have still won. So perhaps we shouldn't spend too much time on it. But I wonder if the law should be, and maybe this makes it too subjective, would the keeper have got it? Because Donnarumma wouldn't have got it, whether Robertson was there or not.
Yeah, Donnarumma wouldn't have saved it, but Robertson was clearly in an offside position. I think the goal should have been given on balance. What I would say is that the decision was made on field, and I don't think it's a complete rick of a decision. If we can sort of complain about VAR over officiating and things like that, you say on balance it should be a goal, but the fact that it wasn't given, I don't think it's an absolute nightmare. I'd be upset if it happened to my team, obviously, but I don't think it's the be all and end all of the result, obviously. But I would argue that it's not a major mistake as sort of discussed in certain circles.
So the people complaining about it are saying we do want them to re-referee the game, is what they're saying. What we really want is VAR to re-referee it. From a Liverpool perspective, Barry, and I know we've talked about, these new signings and players needing time. It does feel like it is an issue if you break the transfer record twice in one summer, and for various reasons, neither of those players make any meaningful impact. What are we now, the 10th of November?
Certainly does in the case of Alexander Isak, who is, he was on the bench yesterday, didn't come on. He has done nothing of note in the Liverpool shirt, and he cost £130 million. And I'm not sure why that's not more of a talking point, if I'm honest, because I don't recall anyone mentioning it yesterday in the TV coverage. Why isn't he playing? Or why didn't he come on?
Something that's not mentioned is that how much money they recouped. So they talk about how much money Liverpool spent. They did recoup over 200 million. I get Barry's point about Isak. He obviously shows that those players who don't have a pre-season, and he obviously didn't do that much in pre-season, and now I think Slot is whether he's worried about him getting injured again. He obviously has got injury, whereas if you look at his injury record, he has got something that's obviously continuous in the background that he doesn't want to sort of play him, because why would you not play him against Manchester City yesterday? So that's going to be an issue for Liverpool, having two players that they've paid a lot of money for, plus Wirtz, who has not hit the ground running, and he's a very, very good player, but he's not showing it at all. It's a problem.
I mean, it's nothing to say Luis Diaz would be having a brilliant season for Liverpool, but the fact he's having a brilliant season for Bayern affects it when you watch it and you just see how much they miss him. So 1,000 games for Pep, Will. He's won 716 of them, a win rate of almost 72%. He's lifted 40 major trophies. That's one every 25 games, pretty much. He's lost just 128 times. There are obviously caveats. He's always managed good teams. There are caveats around Manchester City about their ownership really pertinently now, but also with the charges. But still, that's quite a good win percentage. If Tim Sherwood had that, he would be yelling about it, wouldn't he?
Yeah, but how would he get on at Accrington Stanley? That's the question, isn't it? Obviously, you look at Guardiola over that time with Barcelona, with Bayern, and actually this City team is quite pertinent in all this, because where other coaches have probably not been able to evolve as much, when Guardiola sees a problem, he changes it, he adapts, he looks forward. Last season was written off very early on. And now you look at the team, that the players that were brought in. Nico Gonzalez, when he joined in January till the end of the season, was, I think, mediocre at best. But he's improving. Guardiola identified him, maybe because he was available, but an intelligent guy that could learn the Guardiola way, whereas maybe other defensive midfielders he wasn't confident in. The fullbacks last season were mildly farcical. I mean, didn't exist for a lot of the time. But now Nunes has, after a terrible, again, probably year trying to learn how to play right back, looks really good. The cross for the opener on Sunday, and Nico O'Reilly, who came through the academy as a central midfielder and tells people he's a number 10, is now City's best left back. Nori can't not even considered to challenge him for the arguably one of the biggest games of the season against Liverpool. And so this is it. He keeps evolving, he keeps changing, from bringing in going from false nines to Haaland, having Ibrahimovic at Barcelona, things like that. It always changes, and he knows how to use these players, and he sort of stays a step ahead, which is very difficult. A lot of the managers are reactionary, but he's trying to get ahead of people. Of course, a lot of money to spending 50 odd million quid on Nico Gonzalez. No one else is doing that. I appreciate, but an incredible energy, incredible sort of longevity of it all is really impressive, and obviously he deserves great credit for that. And to mark it with such a dominant win is probably, as you say, ominous for everyone else that what he can keep doing.
Yeah, I mean, you did joke about it at the start. I would like to see him have a season at Accrington and see what he could do. But anyway, to the Stadium of Light, Sunderland 2, Arsenal 2. Barry, you must have enjoyed this.
I did. It was a really good game and a brilliant result for Sunderland, obviously. Further enhanced then by Newcastle's defeat at Brentford on Sunday. I suppose when, I think Eddie Howe had his fourth anniversary last week in charge of Newcastle, and when the Saudi Public Investment Fund took over at Newcastle, and those guys were dancing outside St. James's Park with the tea towels on their head. Sunderland were in League One. I wouldn't imagine they envisaged that in 4 years' time Sunderland would be in fourth place in the Premier League. They'd be 2 points above the relegation zone. Life comes at you fast, I guess. This was a brilliant game, I thought. A setback for Arsenal. People were wondering, is it a good result for Arsenal? Is it a good point? Is it a bad result? But they were going to concede a goal eventually. A brilliant goal by Dan Ballard to open the scoring for Sunderland, put the Black Cats among the Pigeons. And it was Sunderland a very physical team. They're a very good team. I don't think they're there where they are by fluke. They've beaten some good sides. This was an excellent draw for them, even though they left it late. But they do have a habit of scoring late goals. And it was one such which earned them a point here that I think they thoroughly deserved.
I agree with you, Lucy. What impressed me actually when it went to 2-1, and it's a brilliant goal from Trossard, is I think everybody thought, well, look at Arsenal. They've done it again. The resilience is there. But Sunderland were really patient. They didn't just lob it in the box. They played and they tried to create the right space and the right time to get the ball in. I was just really impressed with that.
Yeah, just Labry's got them all at it. I think Arsenal will rue the opportunities to go 3-1 up at that point, when there was a period of time when Sunderland were really on the ropes but stayed in the game. I think that sort of lack of creative options coming off the bench because they had the injuries. When Arteta turns around and looks at his bench and sees younger players, even though they're absolutely excellent younger players, that's probably not the time to throw a 15-year-old on when how Sunderland were playing, and they sort of roughed them up a little bit. They also sat back a little when they could have gone for it, but it swung away from the back. Sunderland, brilliant, pressing man to man, high tempo, they're well organised, and what they do it tactically is brilliant. Labry, you can't always tell how they're going to play with it when the opposition have got the ball. Sometimes they go high, sometimes they sit, sometimes they go quite close to their own goal and defend the edge of the box. So it's difficult to play against them. You got Siddiqui and Xhaka central midfield, Isidore, Brobbey. I watched at Ajax, so they've got a threat when you put the ball into the box. They're all tenacious. And they understand what's expected of them. I don't. Obviously, they're overperforming, but we've seen teams come into the Premier League and do what Sunderland have done and keep going at it. I think Sheffield United did it, just something a little bit different, and he certainly has the tactical nous to keep them. And obviously, it's all about the players that are good enough.
I mean, it is worth pointing out, you're right, the Arsenal are missing Martinelli, Gyökeres, Odegaard, Madueke, Havertz, Gabriel Jesus. There's a lot of attacking and creativity that they're missing. But still, I mean, I thought that finish as well, actually, from Brobbey is worth mentioning, isn't it? I mean, both Sunderland goals were brilliant.
Yeah, physicality, the sort of acrobatic nature of it all, with the goalkeeper and defender around him, it's incredible. I think Arsenal, just the fact that he used his body and got his foot up a little bit, wanted a free kick, but there's no chance of that. And it shows that they've invested throughout the squad at Sunderland. So someone like Brobbey that maybe he's been sort of tipped for, no offence, Sunderland at the start of the season, but bigger things, and brought him in and have sort of, it's a very sensible signing as a striker. Both goals are great. I mean, as I say, you look at the Ballard touch and finish, a man for the big moment. You look at the block at the end, the playoffs at the end of last season. It's him as well. And he's one of the very few that have stayed in the team for the end of last season. And to get that amount of investment into a squad and a number of players, and to coach it into a sort of cohesive unit, is really impressive from Labry's. If you count who's carried on through, the goalkeepers changed, the fullbacks, everything, and then someone like Brobbey that's come in, maybe someone that was expected bigger and better things of in his early career than joining a team that had been promoted to the Premier League. But it shows what you can bring if you have that investment. If they are paying a lot of money for these people, but the Premier League is the place people want to be. And that finish from Brobbey, physical, acrobatic, goalkeeper and defender descending on him, it's really, really good. Arsenal probably wanted a free kick for it for some reason, which I can't understand. That's what they have. They have the ability to be patient, but have that physicality in the moments where it matters and the decisive decisions. And they've done really well, considering 11 games in, to be a cohesive unit with an overhauled squad and everything.
When I go around Europe or doing games like Chelsea last year, where it was games like Noah and places, teams like that I have absolutely no idea about the players until I start to research. It seems to be that the best players that I saw last season are now all playing for Sunderland. So in terms of the recruitment and the scouting, very, very good. I was like, I'm sure I saw it. I look back, he was at Club Brugge or where he was. So I think that's an important part. It's not about just throwing a load of players together. They've obviously looked at it, and whoever they've got recruitment wise, and I think probably out of all the promoted clubs, they've got their recruitment department sorted, Sunderland, because they fit together and they have everything that Labry needs for them to function properly in the Premier League.
Highlight of the game was David Raya making that save and then not knowing where the ball was, like a kitten playing with a ping pong ball. And also Barry, that Declan Rice slip at the end, you must have thought, hang on, we're in it. Was it Lefay? I can't remember who was through, just for that one moment where you were like, this could be it.
Yeah, Declan didn't have brilliant game here. He was very much at fault for the first goal. And funnily enough, Gabriel, you could argue, was at fault for the second, and they're sort of Arsenal's two most reliable players. either team could have won it right at the death. Yeah, super Dan Ballard. His goal-saving block towards the end was... It would have been horrific to lose it after all at that stage.
Oh, that would have really hurt, wouldn't it? Yeah. So look, Arsenal's next 3 games: Spurs at home, Bayern at home, Chelsea away. So they will be interesting. And before we end part 1, we are nominated for the best podcast at the FSAs. We need your vote. If you just Google FSA Awards 2025, you can find the link on our Instagram, Blue Sky, on my X account, etc., etc. Barry, why should people vote for us? Because they didn't last year.
Yeah, because they didn't last year. It was apathy on our part, or complacency on our part, apathy on theirs, and laziness. It takes less than 2 minutes, and you can vote for Lucy Ward as best pundit while you're in there. So, and there are lots of other Guardian Women's Football Weekly. Sophie Downey is nominated, I think, for best writer. So lots of Guardian folk to vote for.
Yeah, St. Patrick's soon as well, and not the 20, our friends as well. You have until midday on Monday, the 17th of November. Vote now, vote often. Thank you so much.
Vote on all your different devices.
Please do. But now if we don't win, God, it's even worse if you're sort of crawling and desperate about it. But it's okay. If we don't win, we just don't mention it afterwards, Lucy.
Yeah.
That's fine. That'll do for part 1. Part 2 will begin at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Let's go to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Spurs 2, Manchester United 2. Nick Ames said afterwards, a wild ride that left everyone back where they started. I guess, Lucy, you might be forgiven for thinking this was a good game because of all the goals in the last 10 minutes. It wasn't a good game, but they're 2 really interesting sides because they're quite hard to work out what they're doing a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think the 2 sides that are not quite where the manager wants them to be, but are showing signs. I mean, Spurs, I know you're a Spurs fan, Max, but I do like Thomas Frank, and he's going about Spurs in the way that he thinks is the best way in terms of you don't sort the defence out first because you can't separate things in a team. But he's making them less open for the majority of the time. And I've done them a couple of times, but what that does is it makes them, if that doesn't quite work and they lose, then he's like, what am I watching? Because I'm not watching a performance and I'm not watching a result. I don't think that they have recruited as well as they could in attack. I think Simons, I've seen a number of times at Leipzig and other clubs, and he's been very good, but you just never know when you just put them into it. They have to come into a team that's doing all right, I think that's the thing. But Man United, I think they set up now, they look really well, they lock on, they get close to teams, they don't look as open as they did. I think Casemiro in the middle is looking better, but they still need legs in that central midfield. They look compact, the defence looks good. He always plays Harry Maguire, which tells you a lot in big away games where you need to be quite tough and have a leader there. Interesting that he played like a fluid front 3, Amorim, full of 3 technical players who rotated, so very difficult to defend against because obviously they knew that the 2 centre-backs for Spurs are very, very good. And it was quite effective up to a certain point before Šeško came on, but is it the 4th game in a row that Man United scored late, which tells you a lot about them. Quite easily, Richarlison and the celebration when Richarlison scored was... so it was mad because hasn't that happened? I said this on the radio yesterday. Hasn't that happened sometime before where Richarlison did like the chicken dance or something? And then
Anfield in 2023, I think. Yeah. Same thing.
It's like you celebrate, you think, well, I can just go for it here because they're not going to go and score at the other end. And then when they go and score at the other end, it's just like head on hands. But from a Manchester United point of view, it's not really the fragility that you saw last season. I'm sure they're not improving as quickly as United fans want them to. But Spurs were better in the second half, shifted up a gear, a bit more control, positive steps both ways, but really a game that's not right at a high level, but was entertaining towards the end.
I mean, it was better than Europa League final, Barry, wasn't it?
Only because of the last 10 minutes, but otherwise I would say no. I think, but obviously a flurry of goals towards the end is going to leave you with the impression that that was a good game. But I would say for the first 80 minutes, I was pretty bored watching it. It wasn't very entertaining. Lucy, I'm just curious to know, as a former player. Why does Ruben Amorim insist on replacing one of his centre backs in every game? It seems odd and something most coaches don't do.
I don't know whether it's something to do with, because he uses his centre backs to start the build up. So I don't know whether he changes his centre back so that he has a different angle or a different way of getting himself forward. It must be something to do with when they've got the ball rather than when they haven't got the ball. However, sometimes the negatives outweigh that, because what then happens is that you're not as set at the back as you would have been throughout the whole of the game. So it's risk and reward, and it'd be interesting. Has anybody ever asked him? But I'm presuming it's to do with how they are coming out of the back.
Last week, I went to interview Lenny Yoro, and he was asked about this very thing, and he provided absolutely zero insight on the matter and just said it's the manager's decision. So take that as you will.
Well, I get you, Paxman. You should have gone full Paxman and just keep asking Lenny Yoro. Just batter Lenny Yoro down into submission. Answer the question, Lenny.
Well, it was a very good interview where on some sort of media, it says that his mother named him after Lenny Kravitz, despite the spelling being different. Which he was asked by another journalist within this interview, and he goes, "No, that's not true," which was mildly unfortunate, but good research from everyone.
And also, look, I mean, it may be rewarding for Thomas Frank that the Spurs fans booed all his substitutions and they all went and did something quite useful.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
I think it's worth mentioning about Thomas Frank in that in his previous managerial roles, it has taken him over 10 games to get his teams playing the way he wants to. So Spurs are now on they've played about 15 or so under him.
He's a proper manager. I think he's the real deal, Thomas Frank. Just from prep that I've done for when he was at Brentford, and the sort of stuff that he does, watch interviews with him and the way that he talks. And the thing is, I think he's a people person. You've got far too many in the game at the moment who are failing because they know it all on the paper and on the screen to show the players, but they cannot interact with the players. And I think that him and his staff have got that ability as well, which is the key.
Yeah, no, I have faith. I think he's very good. Let's go to Stamford Bridge. Chelsea 3, Wolves 0. Not necessarily the game. It was a very straightforward win for Chelsea. The bigger story is Rob Edwards. Wolves expecting to announce his arrival very soon. 3.5-year deal. He wasn't in charge for Middlesbrough's 2-1 win over Birmingham at the weekend. Borough say they're disappointed. Apparently compensation for £2 million has been agreed. Barry, Wolves are 8 points from safety. Middlesbrough are in the top 2 in the Championship. What do you make of his decision?
Well, obviously I have no real insight into what has motivated his decision. I presume it's a combination of getting paid more money, the fact that Wolves are in the Premier League and he has history with Wolves. He played for them. He used to coach their youth team, I believe his family live in Telford near Wolves training ground. So it's a combination of those factors. Only time will tell whether it's a step up, a step down, or a step sideways. I would say on face value, it's a step sideways at best. And if I was a Middlesbrough fan, I would be pretty fed up with him, if I'm honest. And I'd say if I was Steve Gibson, who seems to be one of the better chairmen in football, I would be very angry with him. But these things happen. As Roy Keane famously said, if you want loyalty, get a dog.
It's interesting because when you first see it, you think, what on earth are you doing? He's actually got Middlesbrough going, even though he's a couple of times after the game, he's got a little bit Alan Partridge with some of his interviews, Rob Edwards, and the Middlesbrough fans who are, proper Northern, looking a little bit strange at his antics on the side of the pitch when they win. However, they're winning. I think the key here is, like Barry said, he had worked as an academy coach. I think he was assistant to Kenny Jackett, I think it was. So he obviously wants to go home to one of his homes. So I can understand that, but you only have to look at the table to realise, and look at the squad to realise that this is going to be difficult. I think a key thing is one of his assistants, Adi Vivish, he isn't going to Wolves with him from Middlesbrough, and those in the know that he has a massive part to play in how successful Middlesbrough have been, and he's not going to Wolves.
Was he the brains behind Mark Robbins at Cov?
Yes.
Is that right? Unless, that may be doing Mark Robbins a disservice.
But he is very good. You need a good number two. Quite a lot. You need somebody who is different to you. in terms of thinking. So, like diversity of thinking. You need someone who, and a lot of football managers get people in who are their mates that they've had for years, who do not go, in my opinion, you shouldn't do that, or what about this? And they just have people who laugh at their jokes, and then you just become a caricature of yourself. Seen it a lot at Leeds over the years. That's what's happened in the background. So you need somebody who's a little bit different to you, who will sort of. But he obviously is a very, very good coach, very well respected, and a lot of people think that a lot of stuff he did at Borough was down to his work.
That's why, obviously, I mean, for me to get Barry to laugh at one of my jokes, it's next to impossible. So, that's why I have a number 2. We're different people, different views on the game.
I'm quite pleased because he's not sat in the dark and in a pit, that man pit now we've got him under a little bit of light, and you can actually, and he's brushed his hair. Unbelievable.
I have not brushed my hair in about 15 years.
You can't tell.
Anyway, look, nice moment from Malo Gusto to score his first ever goal in the 98th game, and Estevao is good, the Chelsea reports. Will, Aston Villa 4, Bournemouth 0. Did you see this coming?
I did speak to someone after the Forest game against Bournemouth, where Bournemouth won, and he said Bournemouth really don't look very good at them. Didn't play very well, and that actually maybe they are a little bit brittle about them. It's a very young squad. Say lost a lot of players over summer. Really done well to compensate for that with a recruitment. I saw them at Leeds and they weren't very good that day. So Menu was very poor. I think obviously yesterday, one problem was that thrown a little bit off guard by the head injuries early on and Smith having to go off, and that changes things. But I think Iraola said they were pretty awful in the first half. After that, not much about them lacking energy. Obviously, a very good free kick from Buendia. Do like a straight run up and straight over the top. always an enjoyable one. And Arnold's strike was really good as well. But yeah, Bournemouth, I don't know if it's a little bit of high energy starts the season's caught up with them. A little bit tired, a little bit leggy. Maybe even mentally fatigued from everything they've had to take on board with the odd changes and stuff. But they're doing very well. They've set a good foundation for the season. And let's be honest, Aston Villa are no mugs. They've had difficulties with balancing domestic and Europe, but that squad, as you see yesterday, I know Watkins missed out in England's squad, so he looked a little bit more live than I've seen him recently. The sort of classic point to prove to people more senior, and missed the penalty. Really really good save from Semenyo's penalty by Martinez, and he made another cracking save with a deflected shot. So it wasn't easily could have had a couple of goals. It wasn't a complete rollover in the second half, but I just think maybe there's just it's been quite an intense start to the season that might have caught up with them, and Villa just find the stride, and those two things meet, and it ends in a sort of domination from Villa on their part.
Yeah, I wonder, Barry, I guess there are so many teams in this division that are good, and if you arrive and you are playing well and the other team just have a slightly off day, there will be, I think, a lot of teams that have good little runs and then bad little runs.
Yeah, Villa are a decent team. They're brilliant at home. I think they've only lost one in 24 Premier League games at home. Bournemouth are an undeniably good team. I think this scoreline flattered Villa a little bit. They did deserve to win. Bournemouth were rubbish in the first half, but they missed two very good chances, missed that penalty as well. And then up until near 80 minutes, Villa were only in inverted commas, 2-0 up. Could have been, Bournemouth probably should have scored, and then the game got away from them. So I don't think they were as bad as the 4-0 suggests.
We spent a lot of the last pod talking about how good Dan Burn's head is.
I was thinking this, watching this game yesterday. What all the lovely things we said about Dan Burn. And he looked like a fan he is a fan who'd won a competition to play for Newcastle against Brentford. Yeah,
it's interesting. Look, Brentford won 3-1. They have an identical record, Lucy, in their first 11 games as last season. And when you consider who's left the club, including Thomas Frank and Wissa and Mbeumo, that is mightily impressive. But yes, Dan Burn is slower than Django Ouattara would be the sort of conclusion to this game.
Yeah, I think that Newcastle have just shown in parts of this season that the injuries to defence, particularly to fullbacks, Livramento and Hall is so important, because Dan Burn does brilliantly, whether he fits in at left back or whether he's playing as a centre back, whatever. But as soon as you get him in a foot race with someone who's quicker than him, it's difficult. He's like 6 foot, whatever, 6'20". It's very, very difficult for him to catch up. But Newcastle, they just look a little bit meek and mild yesterday, didn't they? They didn't, Brentford, they've got that model that, they were convincing us that whichever manager was in, they'd still play exactly the same. And it looks like is what's happened. They're leaning a bit more on set pieces. Michael Coyote, I love him. He's great. Not just I think Keith Andrews called him the best long throw taker in the world. And they scored more than double the number of Premier League goals from throw-ins than any other team. So they're using that to their advantage. But players are playing well. Thiago's playing well. He's got them going as a group, and they're just relentless. Everything they do, Brentford, particularly at home, they're just absolutely relentless, and Newcastle just weren't a match for them. And it's disappointing. You look at the Newcastle fans away from home, they haven't won in 10, 2 points above the relegation zone. Barry, you'll be pleased, but I think Newcastle fans, just a little bit of a worry now, just a lack of threat. They're getting themselves up. I've done some Champions League games at home, and the atmosphere is brilliant. They play really well. They haven't managed to get Voltemade keeping him going. He started off very, very well, but it's like Eddie Howe said, it's like getting a brand new team together, because the player at the top of it is not Isak, and he's completely different. Obviously, Vissa being injured, that they would have shared the minutes, I would have suspected. But Voltemade plays different, and the whole team has to get used to that, and they just don't look the same.
I think you have to ask questions about Eddie Howe regarding Newcastle's away form. This is the third game in a row they've lost away. Brighton, West Ham, now Brentford. It was so obvious Byrne was going to get sent off yesterday. Why wasn't he replaced? He got booked. Then he was very lucky that he fouled Utara in the penalty box, but Utara was incorrectly booked for simulation. Then he gave away the penalty and got sent off. We're criticising Dan Byrne, but he's playing out of position again at left back against a very pacey winger. Lewis Hall is on the bench. Why, he is a left back. Why not start him?
To be fair, I think he was changed. I think Lewis Hall was just there, ready to come on when that thing happened.
Right.
So,
fair enough. Sandro Tonali kept giving the ball away yesterday, but he seems to be undroppable. Joe Linton is not playing well, but he keeps getting started instead of Jacob Ramsey. So I do think, while he is a very good coach, Eddie Howe was largely responsible for what unfolded yesterday and at West Ham.
All right, that'll do for part 2. Part 3 will begin at the City Ground. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Forest 3, Leeds 1. I mean, we couldn't be more across this game. Lucy and Will, you were both there. We sent you both to the big one. It is, Will, a massive win for Forest, isn't it?
Yeah, first win in 10 in the league. First since the opening day against Brentford, actually. And also, don't want to say this to Nottingham Forest, but I was there for both, and they're the only times I've seen Forest this season. So,
interesting.
If Mr. Marinakis wants to pay me some money, I can attend all home games. Yeah, I mean, the first half, I would say, was completely devoid of quality, really. Two teams struggling for confidence. Leeds were sort of gifted the opening goal. And it was a really good finish from Leeds, but that was probably the best thing that happened was Nemecha's goal. And to give up, the equaliser, 2 minutes later is pretty criminal on their part, another error. But obviously you can see that the foundations of having to go from Nuno to Ange to now very Dychean football, where the defence was very solid yesterday. Nemecha, apart from obviously taking advantage of the defensive mistake against Milenkovic, and Murillo got absolutely no change out of them at all. Couldn't cope with the physicality, really. Spent a lot of time sort of moaning at the ref, but it just didn't really have any ability to compete with them. And then it got to the hour mark, and I think everyone could see that Leeds were there for the taking, and Dyche thought, yeah, I've got, you look at that bench, some great players on it. So went with Awani over Eagle Jesus, who I don't think's a proper number 9, and so probably made a lot of sense. And having Hutchinson on the right and Morgan Gibbs-White was getting a bit more influence in the middle and things like that. And then Doy had a really good game there for the taking, and once really good cross and header for the second, just to lift. I think the City ground until that point was really flat, I'd say, and it's definitely not always the case. They're still sort of working out how Dyche will play and things like that, and that lifted it. And then once Jack Harrison had to come on at left back and gave away the penalty again against Hutchinson, who has really not done much since he's arrived at Forest for a big fee. Yeah, obviously that was game over, but big important changes from Dyche. I sorted out the defence that they had very few problems yesterday, and at the same time made important changes at a crucial point, and they were all the right decisions. So, plenty of positivity to take out of it. And after international break, they got Liverpool away, which is tricky. So if they'd lost yesterday against a dreadful Leeds team, it would have caused big problems. But yeah, the green shoots at Forest are there.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was going to be really exciting. Two early goals, but like Will said, it was just lacking in quality. And I think you got one proactive manager in Dyche who thought, we can win this because this is crap, and we can win this, and put 3 subs on. And then a reactive manager in Daniel Farke who then thought, oh shit, I better put my subs on. But it was too late by that point, and Forest had gone 2-1 up. But the Leeds, because they didn't, it's a balance with Leeds. They brought all the recruitment as being sort of big and physical and run all over teams. But at some point, you got to pass the ball. So you've got Tanaka, who physically probably can't stand an away game, but he's technically very good. So when they try and when they get the ball at the back and they try to build up, they look up and it's like, right, well, we're just going to go diagonal from right to left. So all Forest did was just drop the winger and went, thank you very much. I mean, they got a goal out of it, Leeds, but Forest there was various points where Forest could have defended better. But all they did, Leeds, was just go from back to front diagonal. Didn't try and really build from the back and pass it because they didn't really have the passes in the middle, and it was easy for Forest. But what Leeds fans are saying is that in one of the most important positions in the club in recruitment, they've got somebody has not very much experience in first team professional football, and he's been at the club for years, and it's such a key position.
What have they been doing? Have they just sort of cleaning up? What's the
well, who knows? But I think if you're going to keep Daniel Farke, who actually looks like he's tried to adapt the way that Leeds are playing, he's changed the formation slightly, and the recruitment, trying to get more physical and runners in there, because obviously the experience he's had in the Premier League, where he didn't do that well with teams, he noticed the physicality, the difference. But I just think that they needed to really, really back him in the summer, and they haven't. And you're seeing the fruits now, and the run that they're on now. Villa, I think they've got Chelsea, they've got City there, I think they've got Liverpool. It's not a happy fan base at the moment.
It's interesting you talk about physicality, because you'd sort of think if there's something the Championship would match with the Premier League, it would be physicality. It wouldn't be its ability. Or is it finding physical players who are also technically good? Do you see what I mean? Like the Championship, you should be able to match the physicality if nothing else, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Leeds is that they passed the Championship to death, and they had the pace in wide areas in Dan James and Nonto. Dan James came on as a sub, and instead of going on the left-hand side where Savona was really struggling, the right back for Forest throughout the match against Okafor, he put him on the right, and it was a little bit too late. Nonto, I think he's been training, but he's not entirely fit, and he sort of lost a little bit of what made him good. So they basically had the 4 best wingers last season in the Championship. Solomon went back to Spurs, and I think Ramazani's left as well. So they haven't quite got the squad. Doesn't look technically as good as it did last season in the Championship, where they passed teams to death and just use that sort of pace in the wide areas as well. So it's not good.
Sean says, can we unrelegate West Ham now? They beat Burnley 3-2, 2 wins in a row, Barry. Are you unrelegating them?
Not yet. No, I'm certainly unrelegating Forest, I think. But I think it's too early to unrelegate West Ham. They only, inverted commas, beat Burnley. But any win when you're in the position they're in is a good one. There was a big protest before this game by West Ham fans who actually got. You often see protests where people have a fake coffin, to symbolise the death of the club or whatever. And the West Ham fans actually sprung for a real coffin, which I was quite impressed by. I'm presuming it was empty. They didn't just borrow it for a couple of hours.
Do you think they ordered the coffin, pretended someone had died to order the coffin? Like someone had to go and order it in I need a coffin way, or do you think they told?
I guess you can just buy
coffins
a
are us
if you want one.
Yeah,
I mean, there's an Undertaker's near where I live. I might drop in later.
I don't think you can, Baz. I don't think you can just go in
No?
and buy a coffin. No, I think you might need a certificate.
Do you need a certificate to buy a coffin?
I don't know. I presume there's some Undertakers among our listenership if they'd like to clarify. Yeah, it was a good win for West Ham, who went behind to a very good Zian Fleming header. The only setback for them was that Freddie Potts went off with what looked like a hamstring injury, so they might be missing him now for 4 to 6 weeks, you'd imagine. Luckily, there's an international break to take up 2 weeks of that. But good win for them. I'm not unrelegating them yet.
Fair enough. Yeah, Martin de Bradford didn't have a great time in goal for Burnley, but Alphonse Areola just let one in as well, just sort of for the goalkeepers' union, didn't he? But nice to see Callum Wilson scoring a very Callum Wilson-y goal. And nice to see Carl Walker-Peters. He looked very happy when he scored a goal. Something like 10,000 people in that protest with the coffin. Everton hadn't beaten Fulham since 2018 when Marco Silva was their manager. They beat them 2-0, Will. Fulham 1 point above the relegation zone. Marco Silva was pretty scathing afterwards, says it's not good enough at all. We didn't cope. It's a moment for us to blame ourselves and, cliché alert, look at ourselves in the mirror.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been far worse with the amount of disallowed goals knocking around as well. Yeah, Fulham have really struggled. Injuries have taken the toll. The sort of lack of investment in the squad is problematic, which will frustrate Silva. Everton actually did some good business in the summer, and it's really showing now as well. Probably the difference in the two squads. Fantastic assist from Irabunam for Idrissa Gueye. No need to try and score yourself, and you can sort of dummy it against your own foot. I don't know what you call that, but a fantastic moment. Good for the fantasy football managers. They'll get the assist points from that.
No, I think Dewsbury Hall gets the assist. Interestingly,
no,
not that I care, but someone else said it on Match of the Day or something. Yeah, I did say interestingly because, but yeah, apparently. But do carry on.
Well, yeah, considering Tarkowski try and sort of thrash the ball through the net and whatnot, but yeah, I think Fulham are just sort of in a little bit of a malaise. After a few quiet weeks for Everton, they seem to be back at it. Grealish, Dewsbury Hall's looking fantastic signing, which considering he had next to no football last season was a problem. But really, it's probably a tale of two summons of recruitment that Everton seems to have evolved after sort of difficult times recently, whereas Fulham have rested on their laurels. And I think they signed Kevin, and that's it. I mean, how much can you rely on a man named Kevin to change everything? So good they named him once.
Kevin at Fulham, Barry at Everton. Barry had actually not a terrible game, Barry. The highlight of actually the game was Dewsbury Hall's disallowed goal, where he kept celebrating even though the liner was right in front of him with the flag up going, this goal is disallowed, but didn't stop Kiernan just going, I'm going to celebrate this one.
For Fulham, it's coincided with when Postecoglou went from Forest, the Fulham sort of dip has coincided with the word on the street that Forest wanted a short-term manager to the end of the season and then take Marco Silva, who Marinakis knows, in the summer. And I don't know whether that's a coincidence or not, but it just seems to have coincided with Fulham just not playing as well or getting the results, and Marco Silva not happy with the way his team are playing.
Yeah, he's had his head turned, so he's not looking at the pitch, and so that is a problem for Fulham.
He gets his head turned a lot, doesn't he? He does flirt a lot, bless him.
But he does stay a bit, he's just one of those. Do you think he's just a bit of a bad boy in EastEnders? But actually, he's always loyal. But he just occasionally, he has to sort of sheepishly come back.
Bad boy with a heart of gold.
Exactly,
like Jimmy Corkill.
Yeah, I didn't mean it, Sharon. Palace 0, Brighton 0. Any thoughts, Barry?
Brighton got a penalty and then it was overturned, and Jorginho Rutter was booked for, quite correctly, for a dive. And I think apart from that, nothing.
Fine. David says, no questions, probably too raw to discuss on the pod. Love to Lucy for all that nonsense she's had to deal with in recent months. Always love it when she's on the pod, especially when she's giving Barry some stick. Yeah, look, we've chatted about this before, Lucy, about what you want to say, what you can say, what you can't say about the Joey Barton case and you in court. But he's been found guilty of 6 counts of sending grossly offensive social media posts aimed at you, Eni Aluko and Jeremy Vine. He'll be sentenced on December the 8th. Just how was it? How are you feeling?
I don't want to say what I want to say until after the sentences and obviously trust the legal process. But what I will say is it's been traumatic and harrowing couple of years. And I still cannot and couldn't at the time and cannot get my head around someone who I've never engaged with, I've never met, want to try and sort of destroy my career and in terms of that, in my life as well. I think anybody who's been at the hands of any sort of bullying or harassment will know how traumatic it is. And it's just relentless. It was relentless for about 6 months, but it's gone on for 2 years. And it's not just a local thing. It's right in the public eye from someone with over 2.5 million followers. You just can't escape it, really, when it comes down to it. It's, just because I was a female doing a job somebody thought that I shouldn't be doing. I don't know if any of you have ever been a witness at a Crown Court trial, but it's so stressful. When you get cross-examined, you are on trial, basically. Deeply, deeply unpleasant. And I think the message is that, online abuse isn't trivial. I know that. And unless you're at the heart of it, it's very difficult to explain. But words do have power. When they're used maliciously, it causes real harm. But I'm glad it's over. I'm really pleased with the outcome, and I hope that's the end of it.
Yeah, and it must have been so hard to go through with the case. I mean, there must have been so many times you thought, look, I hate this, but I can't be bothered to, like you say, be cross-examined like you're, a defendant.
Throughout the 2 years, I had to keep going because I think you've got to protect the women to come. You've got to protect the women in the future. I think that's how I looked at it. And also, why should I take that sort of relentless bullying and harassment? Somebody has to stand up. But, when you get into Crown Court and you walk into a Crown Court as a witness and everybody's in there, jury, judge, and you're just like, wow, this is real. This is, and it's tough. But like I say, when you're questioned, you're on trial. I was basically trying to justify why I had my job, which was really, really unpleasant. But, hopefully I trust the legal process so far, and hopefully the sentencing will justify what's happened to all three of us.
All the usual freedom of speech advocates, let's call them, on X are up in arms and seem outraged that someone could be convicted in a criminal court for what they say is hurty words. It's not just that, is it though? Like, as you've outlined, it's bullying, it's harassment, and you're being subjected to it at the hands of someone you've never even met who has a huge amount of influence. Their argument that he's been in some way hard done by, I think, is nonsense.
Anyway, Lucy, look, all power to you. And thank you for being good and being on this pod and making it better. As long as you don't shove us up too much, you're very welcome to be on as many times as possible. Slightly different subject. Ronan says, is this the greatest snow goal of all time? I put it in the chat. I don't know if you've seen it. An overhead kick scored by Atletico Ottawa by David Rodriguez in the Canadian Premier League final, played in an absolutely ridiculous amount of snow. That goal made it 1-1. Ottawa went on to win 2-1, so well done to them. But, orange ball and snow is
beautiful.
You can't beat it. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. And that'll do for today. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
Thanks, Max.
And if you've listened to all of this, go and vote for us in the FSAs, because otherwise we'll, just do the right thing. Thank you. Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Danielle Stevens.
This is The Guardian.